Okay, now that I have my remix in the arrangement view window, I can add some things. And the first thing I'm going to add are risers and impacts. And these are a staple of remixes and just like dance and electronic music in general. And if I zoom in here, you can see that there is a transitional spot between bar 16 and 17. And I've added this little guy here, this riser white noise, and this is what it sounds like. It's pretty quick, it's very subtle, it's not overpowering, but it's going to help ease that transition and prep the listener that something new is coming. Here's what it sounds like in context. I'm going to back up a bar and play it again. And that little noise, you could do it a bunch of different ways. That's just one way. But that just cues the listener that something different is coming up right away. If I zoom out here and go a little further down the timeline, you can see that at bar 129, there's a section. And I have something called downlift and riser white noise, but reversed. So if I click on this, you can see that this is going the opposite direction, and this is what it sounds like. And so the opposite of a riser is an impact. A riser rises up toward the end of a section into the next section, and an impact usually happens on beat 1 of the new section and kind of chills out as it goes along. And then in context. And of course, you can use all the same tools and techniques to manipulate these risers and impacts. They're just audio files, so you can reverse them, transpose them, edit them, make them longer, make them shorter, stretch them with different warping algorithms. The whole toolkit is available. If I keep playing this section, you'll see that on this side of it, I actually stopped this at beat 4 of measure 136. This is another common technique. You don't necessarily want the riser to go all the way up to beat 1 of the next section. You want it to like let it hang for a beat. And so if we hear that soloed, I should also note here that there is a fade on this FX drop polarized, and the way I got that was to drag these fade handles that pop up. You can adjust the start and the slope of the fade by using these handles. These handles do not appear if automation view is on, so automation view must be turned off to access these handles, but they're very handy. And the reason I did this was to soften the blow of the impact. Without the fade, it was just a little too much, and I'll show you that. And that transient, as it turns out, didn't really fit in with the music so well, so I just made a quick little fade here, and it still works. Especially in context. And so I'm advising you to add risers and impacts throughout your remix at transition spots. You can see up here in this timeline, I have all of these little flags. Now, the way I added those was to click on a bar. For instance, here is bar 57. You go to Create and choose Add Locator. And then just hit return, and there it is. You can click on these locators and start playback from there. If you are playing back, you can click on them to jump to that locator. Now, you could set these up with hotkeys if you wanted to, and trigger them with your typing keyboard or a MIDI controller, Also notice that there is no shortcut listed for adding or deleting a locator, but you can get around this. In fact, if I go to this box here that says key, or I press Command K, I enter MIDI key mapping. And you can see here that I have set up a hotkey, the letter A on my typing keyboard, I have assigned to add a locator. Now I will delete that and show you how I did it. All I'm going to do is go over here to this set button. This is what creates the locators. I'll click on it and then press the A key. And now that has been mapped to that button, and you can see the little A there. If I wanted to click on 1 here and hit 1 on my typing keyboard, 2 and hit 2, and so on and so forth. Now, when I exit key map mode, I can trigger those functions with those hotkeys. I should mention that this works best if the musical keyboard is turned off, because you'll have a lot more keys available to use as shortcuts. So now if I press 1, if I press 2, 3, or if I wanted to add another locator, I could go in here and press A, and there it is, just because I've set up my hotkeys in key map mode. Another thing you can do in arrangement view is edit. So let's take a look at these drums. I'm going to go here to bar 136, where this gap is in the riser. And what I want to do is maybe make a similar gap in my drums at that spot. So here is something that would be kind of difficult to do in the session view window. Just edit this. But here it's no problem. So maybe I'll leave these hats in, but maybe take out that shaker. I don't know, I'm just experimenting. And I'm right now cutting out a half note, like 2 beats. We'll see what that does. And it makes a much bigger impact when the next section hits, because all of a sudden the texture thins out just for a beat or two. And we could try it with just a quarter note difference. And you could try it with different track combinations and whatnot. Maybe I want to bring that bass note in line with that. Maybe I want to change my arps to not have that quarter note. Again, these are little editing decisions that can just give a little extra vibrancy and variation to your track. And then you notice the impact a lot more too when you do that. You actually might have to bring it down in volume level, because it's so much more noticeable with that gap right before it. Another thing you can do in arrangement view is make these long automation curves, or automate, for instance, volume level at a certain section. One thing I'm noticing in my remix is that when this whole set of pads hits at bar 89, it's not really hitting the way I want it to. It's not as big as I want. Let's take a listen to it. So in my mind, I want that pad section to just go nuts and be really big, and it just sounds really small. That could be for a couple of reasons. Number one, it could be that the volume level is just too low. And so what I could do here is turn my automation view on, go to my pads subgroup container here, and choose mixer and track volume. And then I'll add a breakpoint. And this is just like in clip detail view, same thing. Add another breakpoint here, and I'll move this up, and I'll maybe bump that volume level up by 3 decibels. It went from -8 to -5 very suddenly. And so it did make a big difference in volume level, and it's bigger already. I could do more. What if I wanted to maybe decrease the amount of sidechain compression just for this one section? I could do that. I could go to that set of controls here. Here's my sidechain, and I can either select it from the list up here, or what I'm going to do is actually right click on the control and choose show automation, and there it is, compressor dry wet, and we'll take it from 100% wet down to like maybe 60% wet, and that way there's less ducking, and maybe it's going to work and maybe it's not. We're just going to try it and see. And yeah, that made a difference. I'm not sure that I like the difference, but the point is to experiment. So when you have transferred your session from session view into arrangement view, there are several key things you want to do. You want to add impacts and risers at the transitional spots. You might want to mark out the transitional spots with locators. And then you want to add automation as needed. Now, I can't really tell you what your remix is going to need because everyone's project is different. I can't even tell you that you're going to need risers and impacts at like every transition point. Only do it to the ones that it makes sense to do it at. If there is a great natural transition between two sections and adding an impact or a riser would take away from that, don't add it. This is just me showing you a way that you can spice up your mix by adding these elements in the arrangement view. There's one last thing I'm going to show you, and I actually tried this in my remix before I made the video. I decided I didn't like it, but I'm going to show you anyway. So first of all, in my Finder here, you can see on my desktop, I actually made a folder called Risers, Impacts, and Effects. And I didn't come up with these. I'm going to show you in a later video how to actually make a riser, but I didn't come up with these. These came from packs, and I'm going to show you where to get packs for Ableton Live in another video, but these are files that I just acquired, okay? And then I dropped them into a folder on my desktop. I used the add folder function in the browser to add that folder here, and now I can access them and audition them right here in the browser and just drag them in at will. So I have a couple of other effects in here that are not risers and impacts. They're just sort of ambient noise. Here we go. Here's some Television Air Force ambient. And here's Television Crowd ambient. I also have this one, Airport Sounds. And you can see from the wave it's much larger, so it's much louder. So you could add things like that in too. That's very popular with like lo-fi music and experimental music, things that sort of have a point. Remixes, the point is really to dance. So I guess if you're going for something more artistic, you could do that. And you just drag it in, and maybe it works really well in like a quiet part, right? Like at the beginning here, it's kind of quiet. If I drag this back to maybe like bar 5 or even bar 3. And then I would probably want to put some effects on it like EQ. Maybe filter it out here. And turn it way down. And now at the beginning it sounds like this. You know, it's not like overpowering, it's just in there. I'm not going to keep it in this remix. It doesn't really sound right to me, but it might be right for yours. So, you know, don't forget that anything that you used in any other project can literally be used in the remix project.